to Cooking with Miss Stockton. Today we are going to be making pizza pockets, a cooking class favorite. You will need for your dough 4 cups of flour, a tablespoon of sugar to activate your yeast, a little salt to slow it down, the yeast, some warm water. Yeast will die if your water is too hot or not warm enough, some softened butter, and some olive oil. So, the first step for your recipe today is to get your warm water. Yeast is actually a microscopic fungus and it's in an inert stage when you buy it at the store. You'll activate the yeast by adding warm water. So you want water that's between 105 and 115 degrees. It wants to be warm. So what you want to do is you want to take 1 tablespoon of yeast. Now at the store you can buy individual packages of yeast. And you would want just 1 package of yeast if you're going to do this. I buy my yeast at Costco in large sizes, and then I store it in the refrigerator. You want to store it in a cool place, sealed. And you definitely want to check the package of your yeast because if it's expired, it really won't work very well. I'm going to be adding a little bit of sugar to my yeast, and that will help activate it even more. It's about a tablespoon. It's not the kind of sugar that yeast prefers most of all, but it will definitely work and it'll activate it so that it should start to look a little bit foamy. After a few moments, your yeast may start to form some bubbles and look a little foamy, sort of like it looks here. So at this point, I'm going to mix in a tablespoon of butter. It asks for butter that's softened. If it doesn't blend in perfectly, that's okay because it'll blend in better later when you go ahead and knead up your dough. So you're going to add in 4 cups of flour. So I'm going to add my first cup here and I'm going to stir with a wooden spoon. I'm actually using the bowl that fits onto my KitchenAid mixer because today, instead of kneading by hand like we did with our pretzels, I'm going to actually use my KitchenAid mixer to knead the dough. You can knead it by hand as well, and that will work just fine. All right, that's my 2nd cup of flour. And you can see I'm not measuring extraordinarily carefully here because this dough is a fairly forgiving one. So by the time you get to your 3rd cup of flour, you're going to notice that the dough is following the spoon around the bowl. And at this point, you're going to find it a little bit more difficult to knead in that flour. So I'm going to put my 3.5 cups, like 3 1/4, mix that in. I'm also going to mix in some salt at this point because you don't want to have a saltless dough. The salt adds some flavoring. It also retards or slows down the yeast and its production of carbon dioxide gas. So you're going to want to mix in about a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix that around. You don't want a big pocket of salt anywhere in your dough. And then I'm going to continue to mix in this flour best I can. Remember, I don't have it all in there yet. Now at this point, you're ready to either put your dough on a lightly floured surface and knead it by hand. Remember, when you knead by hand, you're going to push with your heel of your hand, fold it over, push with the heel of your hand, fold it over. So instead of kneading by hand today, that I do right here on the counter, I'm going to use my KitchenAid mixer, just like we would if we were making these pizza pockets at school. So I'm going to go ahead and take my bowl and I'm going to fit it onto what's called the nipples of the KitchenAid mixer. I knew you'd love that. And then I'm going to take my dough hook and I'm going to put the parts together. You lift up, turn, and if it doesn't fall out, you know it's on attached securely. Then I'm going to go ahead and raise my bowl up, and then you just turn it on to stir, and it will knead the dough for you. So you want to let this dough knead until it's smooth and elastic, and you may find that you need to add in just a bit more flour as it's kneading. So after your dough is smooth and elastic, and mine was a little sticky because I just added a little bit more water, so I'm turning it over just a couple more times here. It shouldn't stick to your hands. If it does, then you should add just a bit more flour. And If you find that it's not sticking together, that it's coming apart, then you can put your hands into the water, shake them out, and whatever residual moisture is left on your hands is usually enough to make your dough wet enough so that it will come into something that looks a lot like this, a smooth and elastic ball. All right, then what you want to do is clean your bowl well. Already did this step. So in a clean bowl, you want to measure about a 1/4 cup of olive oil. And what you're going to do with that then is you're going to take your dough and you're going to put it into your bowl of olive oil, and you're going to turn your dough so that it's coated, completely coated in that olive oil. And then if you're planning to make your pizza pockets the same day, you want to cover it with a clean dish towel and let it sit in a nice warm place. Yeast likes a nice day, maybe about at 80 degrees, not too hot. You don't want to put it in the oven, but a nice warm place for an hour or so until it doubles in size. So when it doubles in size, it'll rise quite a bit. In this one, it won't rise over the top of the bowl, but it'll come up quite a ways. You're going to go ahead and punch it down, let it rise again for a second rising, less time, maybe even just 20 minutes, and then we'll roll out your pizza pockets. If you want to use it in a day or two, you want to go ahead and cover your bowl with saran wrap, tightly with saran wrap, and then put it into your refrigerator. Not the freezer, but the refrigerator. A lot of chefs say that pizza dough is actually better after it's been in the fridge for a day or two. After an hour, I was ready to punch down my dough. Okay, so I just punched this down one time. I took my fist and put it right in the dough. It had doubled in size, and this is just going to push some of the air out of the dough. So when your dough has finished rising for the second time, you can go ahead and carefully make a fist and punch it down again. And then you want to divide that dough into 4 equal parts. So I'm going to divide it in half, and then I'm going to divide that half again. And then this part that I have, 1/4 of the dough, I'm going to roll out on my surface. So I'm going to put a little flour on my surface here. I don't want my dough to stick. I don't want to have so much flour that you make it taste really floury. I'm going to go ahead and flour my rolling pin too. I have that nice marble rolling pin that we saw earlier when we made the pretzels. You can use a wooden rolling pin. Doesn't need to have a handle. The French usually don't have moving handles on their rolling pins. If you didn't have anything else, you could use the side of a bottle. That would work as well. So again, I like to pre-form my dough, and I'm wearing my pizza dress today, so no apron, but I'm gonna wash it right afterwards because it sort of acts as both dress and apron in this case. So I'm gonna roll out my dough, again about the size of a piece of binder paper. You don't have to be exactly perfect, but you can reshape your dough a little bit if you need to. And then what you want to do is you're going to put your ingredients in the center third of your pizza pocket. So I have some of that red sauce that we made the other day, and you don't want too much because then when it's cooking it can get kind of goopy. And then you want to put in some grated cheese. I'm also going to put in just a few little sun-dried tomatoes here. You can put in, of course, whatever you like. Also going to add in a little pesto. Keeping everything in that center third of your pocket. The next step is to make some cuts into your filling. So I'm going to make cuts on either side here. Equal on the other side as well. So when you've made all your cuts, what you're going to do is you're going to, starting at the top is a little easier, fold down the tops, and then you're going to fold in each side, and it's going to give you the appearance of being braided. And you want not to have too many little holes. If you see a little hole like I just saw starting there, you want to go ahead and fill it up, and I always turn over the bottom and press that in a little bit. Your next step is you're going to put some egg wash onto the top so it browns really nicely. You'll remember that you want to take a little bowl and you're going to break that egg into a bowl, and then you're going to beat it up. And I have this tiny little whisk here. You can use anything. You can use a fork, you can use something else. And then after that's nicely beaten up, you're going to brush it on top of your pizza pocket. Now, if you haven't done this yet, you want to preheat your oven to 425, 450, even 475 degrees. You want a hot oven for pizza. My oven is already preheating, but just make sure that you turn that on so it'll be nice and hot by the time your pizza pockets are ready to go into the oven. Once you have your egg wash ready to go, you want to take your brush. Again, if you don't have a brush, you could, you spoon it on top and then just move the egg wash around with your clean hands. Again, if you see any little holes, you want to kind of try to pinch them up, because you don't want your pizza pocket opening up in the oven. So we're going to get a nice egg wash that helps to sort of seal the little seal any holes, cracks that you might have, and it also is going to again give it that nice browned appearance. Once you get to this point, you want to transfer it to your prepared baking pan. I have covered my baking pan with some parchment, and then moving it over can be a little tricky. It's nice to get a nice spatula, move your pan as close as you can, and then I put the spatula on under one side, pick it up, and transfer it. Now, I've done this many, many times, so I made it look fairly easy. It may be more difficult than it looks. Also, this pizza pocket is going to expand quite a bit in the oven. When this comes out of the oven, it'll probably be to each side and may have even expanded all the way to this side of the pan. So be ready for some big pockets. This was my pocket when it came out of the oven. Good.